The boy collapsed at the bottom of the porch steps. Blood soaked through his shirt. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Jonas McAllister set down his hammer and walked toward him. The boy grabbed his boot with a trembling hand and finally found his voice.
"Mister, I don't matter, but my sister's hiding by the creek. When they come, and they will come, please hide her. Let them take me, let them kill me, but hide her."
Jonas looked toward the tree line. Then he looked back at the boy. Nobody's taking anyone. If you want to know what happens next, subscribe to our channel and follow this story until the end. Comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. The July sun beat down on the Texas plains like a hammer on an anvil. Jonas McAllister wiped the sweat from his face and kept working on the broken fence post. His shirt was soaked through. Salt stains marked the collar white. The heat was brutal, even for this time of year. But Jonas didn't mind. Hard work kept the memories quiet. 6 years since Margaret died. 6 years since little Clara followed her mother 3 days later. The fever took them both and left Jonas with nothing but an empty house and a cold forge. He heard the footsteps before he saw the boy. Stumbling, uneven, the sound of someone running on empty. Jonas turned and saw a child coming from the west. Maybe 12 years old, thin as a rail. His shirt was torn and dark with something that wasn't sweat. The boy made it halfway across the yard before his legs gave out. Jonas dropped his tools and ran. The boy lay face down in the dirt. His breathing came in short gasps. Jonas rolled him over and saw the wound, a gash across his shoulder, deep and ugly. Someone had cut this boy with a knife. "Easy now." Jonas lifted him carefully. "I got you." The boy's eyes flew open, wild, terrified. He grabbed Jonas by the collar with surprising strength. "My sister." "What?" "She's hiding, by the creek, in the bushes near the big rock." The boy's voice cracked. "Please, mister, I don't matter, but she's only 7. She's only 7 and she saw everything." Jonas looked toward the creek, then back at the boy. "What's your name, son?"
Hal Dawson."
"Hal, I need you to listen to me." Jonas kept his voice steady. "Who did this to you?"
"They killed my pa."
Tears cut tracks through the dirt on Hal's face.
"Shot him right in front of us. Then they killed my ma when she tried to stop him. We ran. We've been running for 2 days. But they're still coming. They don't stop."
"Who?"
"Mr. Crenshaw. Silas Crenshaw and his men."
Hal's grip tightened.
"Please, mister, when they get here, hide my sister. Let them take me. I don't care what happens to me. Just hide her."
Jonas felt something shift in his chest. Something he thought died with his family. "Boy, look at me." Hal's eyes focused on his face. "Nobody's taking anyone. Not you, not your sister. You understand?"
"You don't know them. You don't know what they do."
"I know enough." Jonas stood and lifted the boy in his arms. "Let's get you inside. Then I'm going to find your sister." He carried Hal to the house and laid him on the bed. The boy tried to sit up, but Jonas pushed him back down. "Stay put. I mean it."
"She's scared. She hasn't talked since that night. Not one word."
"I'll find her." Jonas grabbed his rifle from above the fireplace and headed for the creek. The sun was starting to drop, but the heat hung heavy in the air. Sweat dripped into his eyes. He blinked it away and kept moving. The creek wasn't far, maybe 200 yards from the house. Jonas had fished there when Margaret was alive. Clara used to sit on the bank and count the minnows. He pushed those memories down and focused on the task. The big rock sat near a bend in the creek where the water pooled deep. Bushes grew thick around it. Good place to hide for someone small enough. Jonas approached slowly. He didn't want to scare her. "Ruth?" No answer. "Ruth, my name is Jonas. Your brother Hal sent me." He crouched down near the bushes. "He's hurt, but he's safe. He's at my house. I came to bring you to him." Still nothing. Jonas waited. The heat pressed down on his shoulders. Somewhere a cicada screamed its endless song. Then he saw her. Two eyes peering out from the leaves, blue-green like river stones, wide with terror. "There you are." Jonas set his rifle down on the ground. "I'm not going to hurt you, I promise." The girl didn't move. "Your brother told me you're brave. He said you ran all the way from your house. That's a long way for someone your size." Ruth's eyes flickered, just for a moment. "He's worried about you. He needs to see you're okay. Can you come out?" Nothing. Jonas sighed. He sat down on the ground cross-legged and looked up at the sky. "You know, I had a little girl once. Her name was Clara. She used to hide in the barn when she was scared, behind the hay bales where she thought I couldn't find her." He paused. "I always found her, though. And you know what I did?" He waited. "I sat down right outside her hiding spot, and I told her stories until she was ready to come out. Sometimes it took a while, but I never rushed her." The bushes rustled. Jonas kept his eyes on the sky. "Your brother says you like to draw. He says you're real good at it. Maybe when we get back to the house, you can show me." More rustling. Then a small hand reached out and touched his arm. Jonas turned slowly. Ruth stood beside him. Her dress was torn and dirty. Her hair was tangled with leaves and twigs. But she was alive. She was whole. "There you are," Jonas said softly. "Let's go see your brother." Ruth didn't speak, but she took his hand. They walked back to the house together. The girl's fingers were cold despite the heat. She gripped Jonas tight, like she was afraid he might disappear. Hal was sitting up when they came through the door. His face crumpled when he saw his sister. "Ruthie!" The girl broke away from Jonas and ran to her brother. She wrapped her arms around him and buried her face in his chest. Hal winced from the pain, but he held her tight. Jonas watched them for a moment. Then he went to the window and looked out at the land. "How far behind are they?" he asked. "I don't know." Hal's voice was muffled against Ruth's hair. "We lost them yesterday near Miller's Ridge, but they got trackers. They'll find our trail." "How many men?" "5, maybe 6. Mr. Crenshaw always rides with at least 4. Jonas nodded slowly. He knew the name Silas Crenshaw. Everyone in the county knew it. Biggest landowner in 3 territories. Controller the water rights to half the ranches. Some folks said he was just a smart businessman. Other folks said he was something else entirely. "Why is he after you?" Hal was quiet for a long moment. Ruth had stopped shaking, but she still clung to her brother. "My pa found something." Hal's voice dropped. "Papers, hidden in an old chest Mr. Crenshaw sold him years ago. Pa didn't know they were in there until the bottom panel came loose." "What kind of papers?" "Land papers. The original deed to Mr. Crenshaw's biggest ranch. The signatures were different." Jonas turned from the window. "Different how?" "Pa said they were forged. Said the real owner was a man named Wheeler who died 10 years back. Said Mr. Crenshaw must have killed him and faked the papers to take his land." "Your pa tell anyone else about this?" "Just the sheriff." Jonas's jaw tightened. "Let me guess. Sheriff didn't do anything." "Sheriff works for Mr. Crenshaw. Everybody works for Mr. Crenshaw." Hal's eyes hardened. "Pa said he was going to take the papers to the federal marshal in Austin. He was going to leave the next morning." "But Crenshaw found out." "They came that night." Hal's voice broke. "Right after supper. Ma had just put Ruth to bed. I heard the horses first.
Then the shouting. Pa told us to hide in the root cellar, but Ruth wouldn't go without Ma, and by then, it was too late.
Jonas walked across the room and knelt in front of the boy. The papers.
Where are they now?
Hal reached under his shirt and pulled out a small book. The cover was worn leather, cracked and faded. A book of poetry. Ma gave this to me when I was learning to read. It was her favorite. I grabbed it when we ran. Hal opened the book and pulled a folded paper from behind the back cover. Pa hid them in here the night before. Said nobody would think to look in a book of poems. Jonas took the paper and unfolded it carefully. He wasn't a lawyer, but he could read well enough. The deed was made out to a Thomas Wheeler. The signature at the bottom was neat and careful. Nothing like the scrawl he'd seen on Crenshaw's documents at the county office. Your pa was right. Jonas folded the paper and handed it back. This is enough to hang Crenshaw. That's why he won't stop. Hal tucked the book back under his shirt. He can't let us live. We know the truth. We have the proof. Jonas stood and went back to the window. The sun was lower now, maybe an hour until dark. You said they got trackers? Yes, sir. A man named Tucker. He's the best there is. Then they'll be here by morning, maybe sooner. Hal's face went pale. Sir, you should let us go. You don't need to be part of this. We can keep running. Running where? I don't know. Somewhere. Anywhere. Jonas turned to face him. Boy, you got a wounded shoulder. Your sister hasn't spoken in 2 days. You got no food, no water, no weapons. How far you think you'll get? Hal didn't answer. Crenshaw's men'll catch you before noon tomorrow. And when they do, they won't be quick about it. Jonas walked to the fireplace and took down a box of ammunition. No, running's not going to save you. Then what? Jonas started loading his rifle. The motion was smooth and automatic. Muscle memory from another life. They want to fight? We'll give them one. Sir, there's 5 of them, maybe 6, and you're just one man. Jonas finished loading and set the rifle against the wall. Then he went to the corner and pulled back a loose floorboard. Inside was a wooden box. He lifted it out and opened the lid. 2 Colt revolvers. Well oiled. Well maintained. I wasn't always a rancher, Hal. Jonas took out the pistols and checked the cylinders. Before the war, I worked for the railroad. After the war, I worked for men who paid good money for certain skills. What kind of skills? Jonas looked at him. The kind that keep people alive when other people want them dead. He strapped on a gun belt and holstered the pistols. Then he went to the window one more time. You 2 stay inside tonight, away from the windows. There's food in the cupboard and water in the barrel. Don't light any lamps after dark. Where are you going? To have a look around. I want to know the land before they get here. Ruth lifted her head from Hal's chest. She looked at Jonas with those blue-green eyes. Still no words, but something in her expression had changed. Jonas nodded to her. I'll be back. He stepped out into the evening heat. The sun was touching the western hills now, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Beautiful country. Dangerous country. Jonas walked the perimeter of his property, checking sightlines and cover. The house sat in a shallow valley with hills on 3 sides. Good for defense in some ways, bad in others. A smart man with a rifle could pin them down from the eastern ridge. He'd have to deal with that before morning. The creek offered some cover, but not much. The barn was solid enough to stop bullets, but it was too far from the house to be useful. The forge sat cold and dark in its shed. Jonas hadn't lit a fire there in 6 years. He stopped and looked at it. Margaret used to bring him lunch when he worked the forge. She'd sit on that stool by the door and watch him shape the metal. Clara would play in the dirt with her wooden horse. Gone now. All of it gone. But those children inside were still alive, still had a chance. Jonas made a decision then. Standing in front of the cold forge with the sunset burning at his back, he made a decision and he didn't look away from it. Whatever came tomorrow, those kids were going to live. He went back inside as the last light faded. Hal had gotten Ruth to eat some bread and drink some water. The girl sat on the floor near the fireplace, drawing shapes in the dust with her finger. "See anything?" Hal asked.
Nothing yet, but they'll come from the east. The road curves that way, and the ridge gives good cover.
"What are we going to do?" Jonas sat down at the table. His bones ached. His shoulder throbbed from the old wound he'd gotten at Antietam. He was 48 years old, and he was about to fight a small army for 2 children he'd just met. Margaret would have laughed at him. Then she would have loaded a rifle and stood beside him. "We're going to wait." Jonas pulled off his boots. "And when they come, we're going to make them regret it." Hal was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Why?" "Why what?" "Why are you helping us? You don't know us. You don't owe us anything." Jonas looked at the boy, 12 years old, wounded, terrified, trying so hard to be brave. "Because nobody helped me when I needed it." Jonas's voice was rough. "And I decided a long time ago that I wasn't going to be that person, the one who looks away." "What happened to you?" Jonas didn't answer right away. Ruth had stopped drawing. She was watching him now, listening. "I lost my family," he said finally. 6 years ago. Fever took my wife and daughter in the same week." "I'm sorry." "So am I." Jonas stood and walked to the window. "But being sorry doesn't bring them back. Doesn't fix anything. Only thing that fixes anything is doing something, making a choice, and sticking to it."
"And you chose to help us."
"I did." Hal nodded slowly. Then he looked down at his sister.
"You hear that, Ruthie? He's going to help us. We're going to be okay."
Ruth didn't respond, but she got up from the floor and walked over to Jonas. She stood beside him, looking out the window at the darkening land. Then she slipped her small hand into his. Jonas felt his throat tighten. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there with that tiny hand in his, watching the stars come out over the Texas plains. The night stretched ahead of them, long and dark and full of danger. But they weren't alone anymore. None of them were. The first sound came just after midnight. Hoofbeats, faint and distant, somewhere to the east. Jonas was already awake, sitting by the window with his rifle across his lap. He listened. The hoofbeats stopped. Then silence. They were here. Jonas rose quietly and moved to where Hal and Ruth slept on the floor near the fireplace. He touched the boy's shoulder. "They're here." Hal's eyes snapped open instantly. "Get your sister into the back room. There's a trap door under the rug. It leads to a root cellar. You stay down there no matter what you hear. Understand?" "What about you?" "I'll handle it." "I can help. I can shoot." "No." Jonas's voice left no room for argument. "Your job is to keep her safe. That's all. That's everything." Hal wanted to argue. Jonas could see it in his face. But the boy looked at his sleeping sister and nodded. "Yes, sir." Jonas went back to the window. The land was dark, just starlight and shadow. But he could feel them out there, watching, waiting. He checked his pistols, both loaded. He checked his rifle, 6 rounds in the chamber. It wasn't enough. Not against 5 or 6 men. But it would have to do. The knock on the door came 5 minutes later. 3 slow knocks, polite, almost friendly. Jonas didn't move from the window. "McAllister," the voice came through the door, smooth as oil. "My name is Silas Crenshaw. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Jonas said nothing. I'm not here for trouble. Crenshaw's voice carried easily in the still night air. Just want to collect what's mine and be on my way. Nobody needs to get hurt. Silence. I know you're in there. I know the children are with you. Turn them over and you have my word. You'll never see me again. This whole thing just goes away. Jonas finally spoke. Those children aren't yours. They have my property. That makes them my concern. They have evidence that you murdered Thomas Wheeler and stole his land. That makes you a killer. A pause. You've been talking to the boy. Crenshaw's voice had lost some of its smoothness. Whatever he told you, it's lies. The Dawsons were squatters, thieves. I'm simply reclaiming what's rightfully mine. The papers tell a different story. Papers can be interpreted many ways. Not these papers. Jonas moved away from the window. Not when they reached the federal marshal in Austin. The silence that followed was long and heavy. When Crenshaw spoke again, all pretense of friendliness was gone. You're making a mistake, McAllister. A terrible mistake. Wouldn't be my first. I have 5 men with me, all armed, all experienced. You're one man with 2 children to protect. How do you think this ends? Jonas walked to the door. He could feel Crenshaw on the other side. Feel his presence like a cold spot in the summer air. I think it ends with you riding away. Tonight. Right now. Crenshaw laughed, a dry, ugly sound. And why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'm going to kill every man who rides with you. Then I'm going to kill you. And then I'm going to take those papers to Austin myself. The laugh died. You're bluffing. Try me. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Jonas heard boots on the porch, stepping back, moving away. Dawn. Crenshaw's voice came from farther away now, near the yard. At dawn, we're coming in. If those children aren't standing outside waiting for me, we burn this place to the ground, with everyone inside. Jonas didn't respond. Hoofbeats, retreating into the darkness, then silence again. Jonas let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. His hands were steady, but his heart pounded against his ribs. Dawn was 5 hours away. He had work to do. Jonas worked through the darkness with the efficiency of a man who had done this before. He moved furniture away from the windows, stacked flour sacks against the walls where bullets might come through, filled every container he could find with water from the barrel. The children stayed in the root cellar like he told them. By 3 a.m, he had done everything he could inside the house. Now came the harder part. He slipped out the back door and moved low across the yard toward the eastern ridge. The night was hot and still, not even a breeze to stir the dry grass. His boots made soft sounds in the dirt as he climbed. The ridge gave him a clear view of the road below, and there, maybe half a mile out, he saw them. 5 horses tied near a stand of cottonwoods. A small fire burning, figures moving around it. Jonas counted heads. 5 men, including Crenshaw, just like the boy said. He could take a shot from here, maybe drop 1 or 2 before they knew what hit them. But that would bring the rest running, and he'd be caught in the open with nowhere to go. No, he needed them to come to him. Needed them inside his range, where he could control the fight. He watched for another few minutes, memorizing positions, noting which men carried rifles and which carried pistols. One of them was bigger than the others, with a scar running down the side of his face. That would be Tucker, the tracker. Jonas made his way back down the ridge as the first hint of gray touched the eastern sky. Dawn was coming. He entered the house quietly and went to the trap door. He knocked twice and waited. "It's me." The door lifted and Hal's face appeared, pale but alert. "They're camped about half a mile east. Jonas reached down and helped the boy climb out. 5 men. They'll move when the sun clears the hills. What do we do? You stay down there with your sister, no matter what happens, no matter what you hear. I told you I can help. Jonas put his hand on the boy's shoulder. You are helping. You're keeping Ruth safe. That's the most important job there is. Hal's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. There's something else. Jonas lowered his voice. If things go bad, if you hear them inside the house, there's a tunnel at the back of the cellar, behind the old shelf. It comes out near the creek about 50 yards downstream. You take your sister and you run. You don't stop until you reach Copper Springs. Find a woman named Abigail Thornton. She runs the general store. Tell her Jonas sent you. She'll know what to do. What about you? Don't worry about me. But, Hal, Jonas met the boy's eyes. I need you to promise me. If it comes to that, you run. You don't look back. You just run. Hal stared at him for a long moment, then slowly he nodded. I promise. Jonas squeezed his shoulder. Good man. Now get back down there. He watched the boy disappear into the darkness below. Then he closed the trapdoor and pulled the rug over it. The gray light was spreading across the sky now. Maybe 20 minutes until full dawn. Jonas checked his weapons one more time. Rifle by the window, pistols on his hips, knife in his boot. Then he sat down to wait. The sun broke over the hills at 6:14. Jonas knew because he counted every minute. He heard the horses first, then he saw them. 5 riders spread out across the road, moving at a slow walk toward the house. Crenshaw rode in the center on a tall black horse. He wore a dark coat despite the heat. His hat was pulled low over his eyes. They stopped about 40 yards from the porch. McAllister, Crenshaw's voice carried across the still morning air. Sun's up. Time to make your decision. Jonas stayed by the window. He didn't respond. I'm a reasonable man. Crenshaw shifted in his saddle. More reasonable than most would be in my position. Send the children out, and you have my word. No harm comes to you. We ride away, and this is finished. Your word. Jonas spoke loud enough to be heard outside. Like the word you gave Thomas Dawson before you shot him in his own home? Crenshaw's expression didn't change, but the men beside him exchanged glances. Dawson was a thief. He stole from me. He found proof that you murdered Thomas Wheeler and forged land documents. That's not theft. That's justice. Justice, Crenshaw laughed. There's no justice out here, McAllister. There's only power. Who has it? Who doesn't? Right now, I have 5 guns pointed at your house. You have nothing. Jonas raised his rifle and rested the barrel on the windowsill. I have 1 gun pointed at your chest. That's all I need. For a moment, nobody moved. The morning heat was already building, pressing down on the land like a weight. Then Crenshaw smiled. You're a brave man. Stupid, but brave. He turned to the rider on his left. Tucker, burn the barn. The big man with the scar grinned and pulled a torch from his saddlebag. He lit it with a match and kicked his horse forward. Jonas shifted his aim and fired. The bullet caught Tucker's horse in the front leg. The animal screamed and went down hard. Tucker flew from the saddle and hit the ground rolling. The torch flew from his hand and landed in the dirt. Next one goes through a man. Jonas worked the lever and chambered another round. Who wants to be first? Chaos erupted. The riders scattered, pulling their horses around, looking for cover. Crenshaw shouted orders, but his men were already moving, spreading out around the property. Tucker scrambled to his feet and ran for the cottonwoods near the creek. Jonas tracked him, but didn't fire. Ammunition was precious. He couldn't waste shots on a running target. Within seconds, the yard was empty. The 5 men had disappeared into the landscape, using trees and outbuildings for cover. Jonas pulled back from the window. Now the real fight would begin. The first bullet came through the kitchen window at 6:22. It buried itself in the far wall, sending splinters flying. Jonas dropped to the floor and crawled to a new position. Another shot, this one through the front door, then another through the window above the fireplace. They were testing him, trying to figure out where he was, how many guns he had. Jonas didn't fire back. Let them waste their ammunition. Let them get frustrated. The shooting stopped after maybe 2 minutes. Silence fell over the property. Jonas could hear his own breathing, could hear the blood pounding in his ears. Then Crenshaw's voice again. "That was your warning shot, McAllister. Next time, we aim to kill." Jonas didn't respond. "You can't win this. You know that. Even if you take 1 or 2 of us down, the rest will finish you. And then those children will have no one to protect them." Jonas checked his rifle. 5 rounds left. "Last chance." Crenshaw's voice was closer now. He was moving. "Send them out. Walk away with your life." "I got a better idea," Jonas called back. "You send your men home. You come face me yourself. Just you and me. Winner takes all." Laughter from somewhere to the east. One of Crenshaw's men finding that amusing. "I don't fight my own battles, McAllister. That's what I pay these men for." "Then you're a coward." The silence that followed was different, heavier. Jonas could almost feel Crenshaw's anger radiating across the distance. "Burn it." Crenshaw's voice was cold now, all pretense of civility gone. "Burn it all." Jonas heard movement from multiple directions. They were spreading out, surrounding the house. He moved to the back window and saw a figure running toward the small shed where he kept hay for the horses. The man carried a torch. Jonas aimed and fired. The figure went down, clutching his thigh. One less. But now they knew where he was. Bullets tore through the back wall, punching holes in the wood. Jonas hit the floor and rolled to the side as splinters rained down around him. He crawled to the front of the house. Through the window, he saw another man approaching with a torch. This one was using the water trough for cover, darting from spot to spot. Jonas waited until the man broke cover. Then he fired. The shot went wide. The man dove behind the well, and the torch flew from his hand, landing in a patch of dry grass. The grass caught immediately. Jonas cursed. The fire spread faster than he expected, racing across the yard toward the house. Within minutes, it would reach the porch. He had to move. Jonas ran to the trapdoor and pulled back the rug. He yanked the door open. "Hal, Ruth, we have to go. Now." The boy's face appeared in the darkness below. Ruth was behind him, her eyes wide with fear. "The tunnel. Go! I'll be right behind you." Hal grabbed his sister's hand and disappeared into the shadows. Jonas heard their footsteps moving away from the house. He turned back to the window. The fire was closer now, maybe 30 feet from the porch. Smoke was starting to drift through the broken windows, thick and acrid. Jonas grabbed his rifle and headed for the back door. He never made it. The door burst inward, and Tucker came through like a charging bull. The big man hit Jonas at full speed, and they both went down hard. The rifle flew from Jonas's hands and skidded across the floor. Tucker was strong, stronger than Jonas expected. He got his hands around Jonas's throat and squeezed. "Should have given up the kids when you had the chance." Jonas couldn't breathe. Black spots danced at the edge of his vision. He reached for his pistol, but Tucker knocked his hand away. "Crenshaw wants them alive if possible. He doesn't care about." Jonas stopped reaching for his gun. Instead, he reached for his boot. The knife slid free, and he drove it into Tucker's side. The big man roared and released his grip. Jonas rolled away, gasping for air. Tucker staggered back, one hand pressed against the wound. "You son of a—" Jonas didn't let him finish. He grabbed the rifle from the floor and swung it like a club. The stock connected with Tucker's jaw, and the big man went down. He didn't get back up. Jonas stood over him, breathing hard. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead where he'd hit the floor. His throat ached where Tucker had squeezed. But he was alive. He looked toward the front of the house. The fire had reached the porch. Flames were licking at the walls. He had maybe 5 minutes before the whole place went up. Jonas ran for the back door. The cellar entrance was already smoking when he reached it. He dropped down into the darkness and felt his way toward the back wall. "Hal?" "Here." The boy's voice came from somewhere ahead. "We found the tunnel." Jonas followed the sound. His hands touched rough stone walls. The air was cooler down here, but smoke was seeping in from above. He found them at the entrance to the tunnel. Ruth was shaking. Hal had his arm around her. "Go." Jonas pushed them forward. "Don't stop until you reach the creek." They moved through the darkness. The tunnel was narrow and low. Jonas had to crouch to fit. Roots dangled from the ceiling, and the walls were damp with moisture. Behind them, the sound of the fire grew fainter. The smoke thinned. Fresh air touched Jonas's face. Light appeared ahead. The tunnel exit. Hal reached it first. He climbed out and helped Ruth up behind him. Jonas followed, blinking in the sudden brightness. They were about 50 yards downstream from the house, hidden in a thick stand of willows near the creek bank. From here, Jonas could see his home burning. The flames had engulfed the entire structure. The roof was starting to collapse. Everything he had built, everything he had left of Margaret and Clara, gone. Ruth made a small sound, not quite a word, more like a whimper. She was watching the fire with those empty eyes. Jonas knelt beside her. "It's just a house." His voice was rough. "Wood and nails, that's all." She looked at him, and for the first time he saw something other than fear in her face. Something like recognition. "My house burned too." Her voice was barely a whisper, the first word she had spoken since that night. Jonas felt his heart crack open. "I know, sweetheart. I know it did." She reached out and touched the cut on his forehead. Her fingers came away red with blood. "You're hurt." "I've had worse." Ruth stared at the blood on her fingers. Then she looked back at Jonas. "Don't die." Her voice was stronger now, fiercer. "Don't die like Mama and Papa." Jonas took her hand. "I'm not going anywhere." "Promise." He looked into those blue-green eyes. So much loss in someone so small, so much pain, and underneath it, so much stubborn hope. "I promise." Hal touched his arm. "They're coming." Jonas turned. Through the willows he could see figures moving near the burning house. 3 men. Crenshaw and 2 others. The one Jonas had shot in the leg was limping badly. Tucker was nowhere to be seen. "We need to move." Jonas stood and checked his weapons. Rifle gone. He'd dropped it in the house. But he still had both pistols. "Follow the creek downstream. Stay low. Don't make any noise." They moved through the willows, keeping the trees between them and the men by the house. The water gurgled beside them, cool and indifferent. The sun was fully up now, the heat already brutal. After about 100 yards, Jonas called a halt. They crouched in a dense thicket where the bank curved sharply. "Stay here." He checked his pistols. "I'm going to circle around. Draw them away from you." "No." Hal grabbed his arm. "You said you wouldn't leave us." "I'm not leaving. I'm protecting you. There's a difference." "Let me come with you. I can help." Jonas looked at the boy. 12 years old, thin as a rail, wounded shoulder. But his eyes were steady, determined. Your job is to protect your sister. But how? Jonas gripped the boy's shoulders. Listen to me. If something happens to me, you take Ruth and you run. You don't fight. You don't try to be a hero. You run. Find Abigail Thornton in Copper Springs. She'll get you to Austin. She'll get those papers to the federal marshal. Nothing's going to happen to you. Maybe not, but if it does, you need to be ready. Jonas pressed one of his pistols into Hal's hand. You know how to use this? Hal looked at the gun. Then he nodded slowly. My pa taught me. Good. Only use it if you have to. And if you have to, don't hesitate. Aim for the chest and pull the trigger. Don't think. Just do it. Hal's hand closed around the pistol grip. Yes, sir. Jonas stood and moved to the edge of the thicket. He could hear voices now. The men were searching along the creek bank, calling to each other. Check the willows. I saw them head this way. Spread out. They can't have gone far. Jonas counted footsteps. 2 men moving upstream. That meant Crenshaw was somewhere else, waiting, watching. Smart. He slipped out of the thicket and moved downstream, keeping low. The bank curved again, and he followed it, putting distance between himself and the children. After about 50 yards, he stopped and waited. The footsteps grew louder. One man was coming his way, moving fast, careless. Jonas pressed himself against the bank and held his breath. The man appeared around the curve, young, maybe 25. His eyes were scanning the opposite bank. He didn't see Jonas until it was too late. Jonas hit him hard in the stomach. The man doubled over, and Jonas brought his elbow down on the back of his neck. The man dropped without a sound. 3 down, 2 left, plus Crenshaw. Jonas took the man's rifle and checked the ammunition. 4 rounds, better than nothing. He moved upstream, back toward where he'd left the children. The second man was somewhere between him and them. Jonas needed to find him before he found them. The shot came from his right. It missed by inches, kicking up dirt beside his boot. Jonas dove behind a fallen log and returned fire. 2 quick shots toward the muzzle flash. A cry of pain, then silence. He waited, counted to 10, then he moved. The second man was on the ground, clutching his arm. His rifle lay beside him. Jonas kicked it away and pointed his weapon at the man's face. Where's Crenshaw? The man spat blood. Go to hell. Wrong answer. Jonas brought the rifle butt down on the man's head. Not hard enough to kill, just hard enough to put him out. 4 down. Crenshaw left. Jonas made his way back toward the thicket where he'd left the children. His heart was pounding. Something felt wrong. He pushed through the willows and found the spot empty. No Hal, no Ruth. Just a scrap of fabric caught on a branch, part of Ruth's dress. Jonas felt ice form in his stomach. Looking for someone? He spun around. Crenshaw stood at the edge of the thicket. In front of him, held by the collar, was Ruth. The little girl's face was white with terror. Crenshaw had a pistol pressed against her temple. Drop the rifle. Crenshaw's voice was calm, almost pleasant. Now. Jonas let the rifle fall. The pistol, too. He pulled his remaining revolver from its holster and dropped it. Good, Crenshaw smiled. Now we can have a civilized conversation. Let her go. I don't think so. This little one is my insurance policy. Crenshaw tightened his grip on Ruth's collar. The boy ran. Brave of him. Stupid, but brave. He can't have gone far, though. Not with that shoulder. Jonas said nothing. His eyes were fixed on Ruth. Here's what's going to happen. Crenshaw took a step forward, keeping the girl in front of him. You're going to help me find the boy, and when we find him, You're going to watch while I take back what's mine. Then, if you're very cooperative, I might let you walk away from this. You're going to kill us all anyway. Probably, Crenshaw shrugged. But this way you get to live a little longer. That's something, isn't it? Ruth whimpered, a tiny sound, barely audible. Something in Jonas snapped. You want the papers? His voice was low, dangerous. Fine. Let the girl go and I'll tell you where they are. Crenshaw's eyes narrowed. You know where they are? The boy told me, in case something happened to him. Where? Let her go first. Crenshaw laughed. I'm not stupid, McAllister. Tell me where they are. Then I'll consider releasing her. Jonas met Ruth's eyes. She was trembling, but she wasn't crying. That stubborn strength was still there, buried under the fear. He made a decision. The book. Jonas kept his voice steady. The poetry book he carries. The papers are hidden behind the back cover. Crenshaw's smile widened. See? That wasn't so hard. He started to turn, pulling Ruth with him. That's when Jonas moved. He dove forward, not toward Crenshaw, but toward the ground where his pistol lay. His hand closed around the grip, and he rolled, bringing the weapon up. Crenshaw reacted instantly. He shoved Ruth aside and fired. The bullet caught Jonas in the left shoulder. He felt the impact like a hammer blow, but he didn't stop. He pulled the trigger. His shot went wide. Crenshaw was already moving, running for the trees. Jonas tried to stand, but his left arm wouldn't cooperate. Blood was soaking through his shirt. The pain was a white-hot lance through his entire body. Ruth scrambled toward him. You're shot! Her voice was high and panicked. You're shot! You're shot! I'm okay, Jonas gritted his teeth. I'm okay, sweetheart. But he wasn't okay. He was bleeding badly. His vision was starting to blur at the edges. Hal, he grabbed Ruth's arm. Find your brother. Tell him to run. Get to Copper Springs. Find Abigail. I'm not leaving you. Ruth, you promised. Tears were streaming down her face now. You promised you wouldn't die. Jonas looked at her. This little girl who had lost everything, who had watched her parents murdered, who had found the courage to speak again after days of silence. He couldn't break his promise to her. He couldn't. Help me up. Ruth pulled on his good arm. It wasn't enough. She was too small. He was too heavy. Then another pair of hands grabbed him. I got you. How? The boy had come back. Together, they lifted Jonas to his feet. The world spun wildly for a moment. Then it steadied. I told you to run. Jonas's voice was weak. I don't take orders very well. Hal ducked under Jonas's good arm, supporting his weight. Ask anyone. Despite everything, Jonas almost smiled. Crenshaw? Ran toward the road. He's probably going for his horse. Then we need to move. He'll be back with more men. They started walking, slow and painful. Ruth held Jonas's hand on one side, while Hal supported his weight on the other. The sun beat down on them. The heat was suffocating. Blood dripped from Jonas's shoulder, leaving a trail in the dirt behind them. But they kept moving, one step at a time, together. They made it maybe 200 yards before Jonas collapsed. His legs just gave out. One moment he was walking. The next he was on his knees in the dirt, with Hal trying desperately to hold him up. Mr. Jonas! The boy's voice cracked. Mr. Jonas, please! You gotta keep moving. Just need a minute. Jonas pressed his hand against the wound. Blood seeped between his fingers. Too much blood. Just 1 minute. Ruth knelt beside him. She tore a strip from the bottom of her dress and pressed it against his shoulder. Mama did this for Papa once. Her hands were steady, even though her voice shook. When he cut himself on the plow, she said pressure stops the bleeding. Jonas looked at her. This 7-year-old girl who had seen too much death already. Now she was trying to save his life with a piece of her dress. That's good, sweetheart. That's real good. It's not stopping. Hal peered at the wound. It's still bleeding through. The bullet's still in there. Jonas closed his eyes against the pain. Needs to come out.
I don't know how to do that.
I know. Jonas forced his eyes open. We need to find shelter, somewhere I can rest. Then we figure out the next step. Hal looked around desperately.
There's nothing out here. Just grass and more grass.
The old Miller place. Jonas gritted his teeth and tried to stand. About a mile north. Been abandoned for years, but the barn's still standing.
Can you make it that far?
Don't have much choice. They got him up again, slower this time.
Ruth walked in front, checking the ground for rocks and holes.
Hal stayed pressed against Jonas's side, taking as much of his weight as his thin body could handle. The sun climbed higher. The heat became a living thing, wrapping around them like a wet blanket. Sweat poured down Jonas's face and mixed with the blood soaking his shirt. Every step was agony. But he kept walking. For them. Tell me about your pa. Jonas needed something to focus on, something besides the fire in his shoulder.
Hal was quiet for a moment.
Then he said, He was a blacksmith, like you. I figured. Ruth said I smell like his workshop. He built things, Hal's voice softened. Not just horseshoes and nails. Real things. Beautiful things. Mama had a music box he made for their wedding. It played her favorite song. What happened to it? Burned. Everything burned. Jonas nodded slowly. He understood about things burning. He taught me how to read the metal, Hal continued. How to know when it's ready to shape. Too hot, and it falls apart. Too cold, and it cracks. You gotta find the sweet spot. Your pa sounds like a smart man. He was. Hal's voice hardened. And Crenshaw killed him for a piece of paper. That piece of paper could bring down Crenshaw's whole empire. Could free a lot of people from under his boot. Won't bring my pa back. No. Jonas stumbled but caught himself. Nothing brings them back. Believe me, I know. They walked in silence for a while. The only sounds were their footsteps and Jonas's labored breathing. Then Ruth spoke. Mr. Jonas? Yeah, sweetheart? Are you gonna die? Hal made a sharp sound. Ruth, don't ask that. It's okay. Jonas squeezed Ruth's hand. It's a fair question. He thought about lying, telling her everything would be fine. But she'd seen too many lies already, heard too many empty promises. I don't know. He told her the truth. I'm hurt pretty bad, but I've been hurt before, and I'm still here. So I reckon the odds are in my favor. Ruth considered this. Mama said the same thing, before the fever took her. Jonas felt his heart break a little more. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I truly am. She said God would protect us. Ruth's voice was flat. But he didn't protect her. Or Papa. Sometimes, Jonas searched for the right words. Sometimes protection doesn't look the way we expect. Sometimes it comes from places we never thought to look. Ruth looked up at him. Like a stranger's house? Yeah. Jonas managed a small smile. Like that. They crested a small rise, and Hal pointed ahead. Is that it? Jonas squinted through the sweat in his eyes. A structure in the distance. Weathered wood, sagging roof, but still standing. That's it. The Miller barn. Thank God. They pushed forward with renewed energy. Even Jonas found strength he didn't know he had. The promise of shelter, of rest, pulled him along like a rope. They reached the barn 20 minutes later. Hal pushed open the door and helped Jonas inside. It was cooler in here. Not much, but enough. Jonas sank down against the wall and closed his eyes.
Water.
His voice was barely a whisper. There's a well out back. Should still be good. Hal hesitated.
I don't want to leave you.
I'll stay with him. Ruth sat down beside Jonas and took his hand.
Go.
The boy looked at his sister. Something passed between them. Then he nodded and ran out the back. Jonas opened his eyes and looked at Ruth. You're a brave girl, you know that? She shook her head.
I'm not brave. I'm scared all the time.
That's what brave means. Being scared and doing the hard thing anyway.
Is that what you are? Brave?
Jonas thought about it. I used to think I was just tired. Too tired to run. Too tired to hide. He paused. But maybe that's the same thing in the end. Ruth squeezed his hand. I don't want you to be tired anymore. Before Jonas could respond, Hal burst back through the door. His face was white.
Someone's coming.
Jonas tried to sit up straighter.
How many?
I couldn't tell. Dust cloud on the road. Coming fast.
Could be Crenshaw.
Could be anyone. Hal pulled the pistol Jonas had given him earlier.
What do we do?
Jonas looked at the weapon in the boy's trembling hand. Looked at Ruth's terrified face. Looked at the blood still seeping through the makeshift bandage on his shoulder. They couldn't run. He could barely stand. They couldn't fight. One wounded man and a 12-year-old against however many Crenshaw brought this time. But they couldn't surrender either. Crenshaw would kill them all.
Help me up.
You can't fight like this.
I said help me up.
Hal grabbed his arm and pulled. Jonas bit back a scream as pain lanced through his entire body. But he got to his feet. He drew his pistol with his good hand. How many rounds you got? Hal checked the cylinder. 4. I got 3. Jonas moved toward the door. If it's Crenshaw, we make every shot count. Aim for the chest. Don't waste bullets on horses.
And if we run out?
Jonas didn't answer. He didn't need to. They positioned themselves on either side of the barn door. Ruth crouched in the corner behind an old feed trough, the best cover they could find. The hoofbeats grew louder. Closer. Jonas raised his pistol. The riders came into view, 3 of them. Jonas's finger tightened on the trigger. Then he stopped. The lead rider wasn't Crenshaw. It was a woman. Gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, sitting ramrod straight in the saddle despite her age. Behind her rode 2 men with badges pinned to their chests. Well, I'll be damned. Jonas lowered his weapon. Who is it? Hal whispered. Abigail Thornton. A laugh escaped Jonas's lips despite everything, and she brought the law with her. Abigail pulled her horse to a stop in front of the barn. Her eyes swept over Jonas, taking in the blood, the pallor, the way he swayed on his feet. Jonas McAllister, you look like death warmed over. Feel like it too, Abby. She dismounted with surprising agility for a woman her age, and marched toward him. I saw the smoke from your place this morning. Rode out to check and found nothing but ashes. She grabbed his chin and turned his face toward the light. Bullet wound? Crenshaw. Her eyes hardened. I figured. That snake's been due for a reckoning for years. One of the deputies approached. Young man with earnest eyes. Ma'am, is this the man you told us about? This is him, Jonas McAllister. Best blacksmith in 3 counties before he decided to become a hermit. Abigail let go of Jonas's chin. And those must be the Dawson children. Hal stepped forward, his pistol still in his hand. How do we know you're really the law? Crenshaw owns the sheriff. Maybe he owns you too. The deputy stiffened, but Abigail just smiled.
Smart boy. Careful. That'll serve you well. She turned to the deputies. Show him your credentials, Marcus. The young deputy pulled a folded paper from his pocket and handed it to Hal. Federal Marshal Service.
We rode down from Austin 3 days ago, following up on a complaint filed against Silas Crenshaw.
Hal's eyes widened. A complaint? Your father. Abigail's voice softened. Thomas Dawson wrote to the federal marshal 2 weeks before he died. Told them everything he found. Asked them to investigate. Jonas felt the ground shift beneath him. The marshal's office knew? They knew. They've been building a case against Crenshaw for months. Land fraud, murder, intimidation of witnesses.
The deputy's jaw tightened. We just didn't have proof. Until now. Hal reached under his shirt and pulled out the poetry book. Is this what you need? He opened it and removed the folded papers from behind the back cover. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. My pa hid them here. The original deed to the Wheeler property, with Thomas Wheeler's real signature. Not the forgery Crenshaw filed at the county office. The deputy took the papers and examined them carefully. His expression changed. This is it. He looked at his partner. This is everything we need. Jonas let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Then his legs gave out. He went down hard. Abigail caught him before his head hit the ground. Easy now. Her voice was gentle in a way he'd never heard before. Easy, Jonas. We got you. The children are safe. Look at them. They're safe. Jonas turned his head. Hal and Ruth stood together, watching him. Ruth was crying silently. Hal had his arm around her. I promised her. Jonas's voice was fading. Promised I wouldn't die. Then don't. Abigail pressed her hand against his wound. Marcus, get the medical kit from my saddlebag. Now. The world was starting to go gray around the edges. Jonas fought to stay conscious. Crenshaw, he grabbed Abigail's arm. He's still out there. We know. We'll find him. He won't stop. He'll keep coming for them. Then we'll stop him. Abigail's eyes met his. But right now, I need you to focus on staying alive. Can you do that for me, Jonas? Can you stay with us? Jonas looked at Ruth, the little girl who had lost everything, who had found the courage to speak again, who had made him promise not to die. Yeah. He gripped Abigail's hand. I can do that. The deputy returned with the medical kit. Abigail opened it and started working on Jonas's shoulder with practiced hands. You know what you're doing? The other deputy asked. I've patched up more bullet wounds than you've had hot dinners, son. Abigail didn't look up. Now make yourself useful and keep watch. Crenshaw could show up any minute. The deputies moved to guard positions around the barn. Hal and Ruth sat down near Jonas, close enough to touch. This is going to hurt. Abigail held up a pair of forceps. I need to get the bullet out. Jonas nodded. Do it. She poured whiskey over the wound. Jonas hissed through his teeth. Then she went in with the forceps. The pain was beyond anything Jonas had ever felt. Worse than the original shot. Worse than Antietam. He bit down on his belt and tried not to scream. Ruth grabbed his hand and held tight. It's okay. Her small voice cut through the agony. It's okay, Mr. Jonas. I'm here. He focused on her hand and his, on the pressure of her fingers, on the sound of her voice, something to hold on to. Abigail worked quickly. Within minutes, she had the bullet out and was stitching the wound closed. Didn't hit anything vital. She wiped her hands on a cloth. You're lucky. Don't feel lucky. Feeling comes later. She helped him sit up against the wall. Right now you need rest and water and to stay out of trouble for at least a week. Jonas almost laughed. That might be difficult. The sound of hoofbeats froze everyone in place. The deputy called Marcus, ran to the door and peered out.
Ryder, coming from the south. Fast!
Jonas tried to stand, but Abigail pushed him back down.
You stay put.
If it's Crenshaw,
Then the deputies will handle it.
she drew a pistol from under her skirt.
And so will I.
Hal moved to stand beside her. His young face was set and determined. I'm fighting too.
Hal, no!
Jonas reached for him. She's my sister. They killed my parents. The boy's voice didn't waver. I'm fighting. Abigail looked at him for a long moment.
Then she nodded. Stay behind me. Don't shoot unless I tell you.
They moved to the door together. Jonas watched helplessly from the floor. Ruth pressed against his side.
Please, God, she whispered. Please, God, please, God, please, God.
Jonas put his arm around her and waited. The hoofbeats grew louder. Then they stopped. A voice called out, Federal Marshals? I'm coming in peaceful. Don't shoot. Marcus stepped forward, his weapon raised. Identify yourself. Name's Tucker Holt.
A pause.
I work for Silas Crenshaw. Worked. Past tense. Jonas's blood ran cold. Tucker. The tracker. The one he'd stabbed in the house. Why should we trust you? Marcus called back. Because I got information you need. And because I'm done. Tucker's voice sounded tired. Broken. I'm done with all of it. Abigail exchanged glances with the deputies. Then she nodded. Come forward. Slow. Hands where we can see them. Tucker walked into view. He was pale and sweating. One hand pressed against his side where Jonas had stabbed him. The wound had been bandaged, but blood was seeping through. He stopped in front of the barn and raised his hands. Crenshaw's gone. Tucker's voice was flat. He rode out an hour ago, heading for the border. Mexico? Yeah, he's got money stashed down there. Contacts. He's going to disappear and start over somewhere else. Marcus lowered his weapon slightly. Why are you telling us this? Tucker was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, There's a little girl. Inside. Right? Nobody answered. I saw her. Back at the house. Before everything went bad. Tucker's voice cracked. I got a daughter. Same age. Maybe a little older. I send money back to her every month. He looked down at his hands. I've done things. Bad things. Things I can't take back. But I never hurt no children before. And when I saw that little girl's face... He stopped, swallowed hard. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be that person. Jonas remembered the moment in the house. Tucker with his gun pressed to Hal's head. The way his eyes had changed when he looked at Ruth. So you let them go, Jonas called out from inside. And Crenshaw found out. Tucker nodded. He was going to kill me, for being weak, he said. I barely got away. And now you want to help us? I want to make things right. Tucker met Jonas's eyes through the doorway. If I can. The silence stretched out. Finally, Abigail spoke. You know where Crenshaw's heading? Exactly. I know the route he takes. Know the places he stops to change horses. Know the man in Laredo who helps him cross. You'll testify to all this? In front of a judge? Tucker took a deep breath. Yes, ma'am. I'll testify to everything. Marcus stepped forward. Tucker Holt, I'm placing you under protective custody as a witness for the federal government. You'll be escorted to Austin to give your testimony. Tucker nodded slowly. Understood. The other deputy moved to take Tucker's weapons. As he was being disarmed, Tucker looked toward the barn one more time. The children, they're going to be okay? Abigail followed his gaze. They're going to be fine. Something like relief passed over Tucker's weathered face. Good. He let himself be led away. That's good. Jonas watched him go. This man who had hunted them, who had held a gun to Hal's head, who had chosen, in the end, to walk away. People were complicated, even bad ones. Maybe especially bad ones. Ruth tugged at his sleeve.
Mr. Jonas, is it over?
He looked down at her. This brave, broken, beautiful child. Not yet, sweetheart. But soon. He pulled her close. Real soon. Outside, the sun continued its relentless climb. The heat pressed down on the Texas plains like a weight. But inside the old Miller barn, for the first time in days, something like hope began to grow. Abigail returned and knelt beside Jonas. Marcus and Cooper are going after Crenshaw. They're taking Tucker to show them the route.
And us?
We're going to Copper Springs. I've got a doctor there who owes me a favor. She helped him to his feet.
Can you ride?
I can try.
Good enough.
They made their way outside. Abigail's horse stood waiting, patient and calm. She helped Jonas mount first, then lifted Ruth up in front of him.
Hold on to him, Abigail told the girl. Keep him steady.
Ruth nodded solemnly and wrapped her small arms around Jonas's waist. Hal mounted behind Abigail on her horse. His face was pale but determined. "What about our papers?" he asked. "The evidence?" "Safe with the marshals." Abigail took the reins. "They'll see it gets to the right people."
And Crenshaw? What if he gets away?
"He won't." Abigail's voice was iron. "Men like Silas Crenshaw always think they're smarter than everyone else. That's why they always get caught in the end." She kicked her horse into motion. They rode toward Copper Springs, toward safety, toward something that might, with time, become a new beginning. Jonas held Ruth against his chest and felt her heart beating steady and strong. They had survived. Against all odds, they had survived. Now came the harder part. Living. Copper Springs appeared through the heat haze like a mirage. Jonas had never been so glad to see the dusty little town in his life. His shoulder had gone numb somewhere along the ride. That worried him more than the pain. Numbness meant damage, meant things dying inside that shouldn't die. Ruth sat rigid against his chest. She hadn't moved the entire ride, just held on like he was the only solid thing left in her world. Maybe he was. Abigail led them down the main street. People stopped and stared. A wounded man on horseback with a little girl in his lap. A boy riding double with the general store owner. Not something you saw every day in Copper Springs. "Doc Patterson's place is at the end of the street," Abigail called over her shoulder. "Just hold on a little longer, Jonas." "I'm holding." But his grip on the reins was slipping. His vision was starting to blur again. The world tilted sideways.
"Mr. Jonas?"
Ruth's voice came from far away.
"Mr. Jonas, you're falling."
He felt hands grab him, heard shouting, then nothing but darkness. Jonas woke to the smell of carbolic acid and clean linen. He opened his eyes. A ceiling, wooden beams, a window with white curtains. Not his house. His house was gone. Memory came flooding back. The fire, the fight, the long ride. Ruth's arms around his waist. He tried to sit up. "Don't even think about it." A man's face appeared above him. Gray beard, spectacles, the stern expression of someone who spent his life telling people what to do. "I'm Doc Patterson. You've been out for 2 days." 2 days. You lost a lot of blood. Abigail did good work getting that bullet out, but the wound went septic on the ride in. The doctor adjusted his spectacles. "You're lucky to be alive." "The children." Jonas grabbed the doctor's arm. "Where are the children?" "Right here," Hal's voice came from the corner. Jonas turned his head and saw the boy sitting in a chair by the window. Ruth was curled up in his lap, asleep. "We've been waiting." Hal's eyes were red. "We didn't want to leave you alone." Something cracked open in Jonas's chest. A dam he hadn't known was there. You two should be resting, not sitting in some stuffy room watching an old man sleep.
You're not old, Hal almost smiled. Just beat up.
Jonas looked at the boy. Really looked at him. The worry lines around his eyes. The way he held his sister like she was made of glass. How's your shoulder? Better than yours. Hal touched the bandage peeking out from under his shirt. Doc Patterson stitched it up proper. Said I'll have a scar, but I'll keep the arm. Scars build character. That's what my pa used to say. The mention of Thomas Dawson hung in the air between them. Jonas didn't look away from it. He'd be proud of you, Hal. What you did out there. How you protected your sister. Hal's jaw tightened. I didn't protect anyone. You did. We did it together. That's how it works. Ruth stirred in her brother's lap. Her eyes fluttered open and found Jonas immediately. You're awake. She scrambled down from Hal's lap and ran to the bed. You're awake! You're awake! She grabbed his hand and squeezed tight enough to hurt. Jonas didn't mind. I told you I'd stay. His voice was rough. I keep my promises. You were asleep for so long. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought you went away like Mama and Papa. I'm right here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere. Ruth climbed onto the bed, careful to avoid his wounded shoulder, and curled up against his side. Within moments, she was asleep again. Jonas looked at Hal. She been sleeping like that a lot? Only when she's near you. Hal's expression was unreadable. She won't sleep otherwise. Just sits there with her eyes open, watching the door. She's been through too much. We all have. Doc Patterson cleared his throat from the doorway. The boy needs rest too, and food. Abigail's been bringing meals, but he barely touches them. Hal, Jonas kept his voice gentle. When did you last eat? The boy shrugged. Don't remember. That's not good enough. Go downstairs, eat something, sleep in a real bed. I don't want to leave Ruth. Ruth is fine. She's with me. Jonas held the boy's gaze. You can't take care of her if you're dead on your feet. Your pa would tell you the same thing. The mention of Thomas worked. Hal's resistance crumbled. 1 hour. He stood slowly, his legs stiff from sitting. Then I'm coming back. Take 2. I'm not going anywhere. Hal hesitated at the door. Then he turned back. Mr. Jonas? Yeah? Thank you. The boy's voice broke. For everything. Before Jonas could respond, Hal was gone. Doc Patterson moved to check Jonas's bandages. Good kids, the doctor muttered. Been through hell and back, but they're still standing. They're stronger than they know. So are you. Patterson peeled back the dressing and examined the wound. This is healing well. Another week and you'll be able to move around. 2 weeks, maybe 3, you'll be back to normal. Normal. Jonas stared at the ceiling. Don't know what that means anymore. It means whatever you decide it means. Patterson replaced the bandage. That's the thing about starting over. You get to choose. He left Jonas alone with Ruth. The little girl slept on, her breath warm against his side. Her hand still gripped his, even in sleep. Jonas closed his eyes. For the first time in 6 years, he slept without dreaming of fire. 3 days later, Abigail came with news. Jonas was sitting up in bed when she arrived. Ruth was drawing on a piece of paper Hal had found for her. The boy was reading by the window, his lips moving silently over the words. They got him! Abigail's voice was triumphant. They got Silas Crenshaw! Hal dropped his book. Ruth's pencil froze mid-stroke. Where? Jonas asked. 20 miles from the border. Tucker's information was good. The marshals were waiting when Crenshaw arrived to change horses. Abigail sat down heavily in the chair by the bed. He tried to run, shot one of the deputies in the leg, but they brought him down. Dead? Alive,
Barely. A hard smile crossed Abigail's face. He'll stand trial. A real trial, in front of a federal judge. Not one of his bought and paid for county men.
Hal's hands were shaking.
He's really going to pay? For what he did to my parents?
He's going to pay for everything. Abigail reached out and squeezed the boy's shoulder.
The papers you saved, Hal. They're the key to the whole case. Without them, Crenshaw might have walked away. With them, he's finished.
Ruth looked up from her drawing.
Is the bad man going to jail?
Yes, sweetheart. Abigail's voice softened. The bad man is going to jail for a very long time. Ruth considered this. Then she went back to her drawing. Jonas watched her. Something had changed in the little girl since they arrived in Copper Springs. The emptiness in her eyes was fading. Not gone, but fading. What about Tucker? Jonas asked. Witness protection. He's already on his way to Austin to testify. Abigail shook her head. Strange world when your enemy becomes your ally. He made a choice. At the end, when it mattered.
You think that's enough? After everything he did?
Jonas thought about Tucker's face when he looked at Ruth. The way something broke open behind his eyes. I think people are more than the worst thing they've ever done. If they want to be. Abigail studied him for a long moment. Margaret always said you were too forgiving. The mention of his wife's name hit Jonas like a punch to the gut. He hadn't heard anyone say it out loud in years. You knew Margaret? Knew her? Jonas, we were friends for 15 years before you ever showed up in this county. Abigail's eyes glistened. She used to come to my store every week. We'd have tea and talk about everything and nothing. She never mentioned it. She didn't mention a lot of things. That was Margaret. Kept the important stuff close. Abigail wiped her eyes. When the fever took her and Clara, I wanted to come see you, wanted to help, but you shut yourself away so tight nobody could reach you. I know. I watched you disappear for 6 years, Jonas. Watched you become a ghost. Abigail glanced at the children. But look at you now. Jonas followed her gaze. Hal was back to his book, but his posture had relaxed. Ruth was drawing with more energy than before, her pencil moving in quick, confident strokes. They saved me, Jonas said quietly, as much as I saved them. That's how it works. Abigail stood and smoothed her skirt. Now, we need to talk about what happens next. What do you mean? I mean these children have no home, no family, no legal guardian. Abigail's voice was careful. The county will want to place them somewhere, an orphanage most likely. No. The word came out hard and fast. Jonas surprised himself with its force. No orphanage. He looked at Hal, who had gone still by the window. They stay with me. Abigail raised an eyebrow. You don't have a home either, Jonas. It burned down, remember? Then I'll build a new one. With what money? What resources? I'll figure it out. Jonas pushed himself up straighter despite the pain. Those kids aren't going to some institution where nobody knows them and nobody cares. They've been through enough. Hal crossed the room in 3 quick strides. You mean it? We can stay with you? If you want to. If I want to? The boy's voice cracked. Mister, Jonas, there's nothing I want more. Ruth looked up from her drawing. She didn't say anything, but she climbed onto the bed and pressed herself against Jonas's side. That was answer enough. Abigail watched the 3 of them with an expression Jonas couldn't quite read. You're going to need help, she said finally. Building a house, getting back on your feet. You can't do it alone. I know. Good thing you have friends then. Abigail moved toward the door. I'll talk to some people, see what we can do about lumber and supplies. There's a piece of land just north of town that nobody's using. Might be able to work something out. Abby. She stopped at the threshold. Thank you. Jonas meant it with everything he had.
For all of it.
Don't thank me yet. A smile tugged at her lips. Building a house is hard work. You might curse my name before we're done. She left. The room felt quieter without her. Hal sat on the edge of the bed. His eyes were bright with something that looked like hope.
Mr. Jonas, can I ask you something?
Anything.
What's it going to be like? Living with you, I mean?
Jonas thought about it. Thought about his empty house and his cold forge and the silence that had filled his days for 6 years. I don't know, he admitted. I haven't lived with anyone in a long time. I might be bad at it.
That's okay.
Hal's voice was steady.
We might be bad at it too.
Probably make a lot of mistakes. Probably. Get on each other's nerves. Almost definitely. Jonas looked at the boy, really looked at him, saw the fear underneath the hope, the scars that didn't show on the outside. But we'll figure it out, Jonas said. Together. That's what matters. Ruth tugged on his sleeve.
Mr. Jonas?
Yes, sweetheart?
Can I call you something else?
Her blue-green eyes were serious.
Mr. Jonas is too long.
What did you have in mind? She chewed her lip, thinking hard. What about Jonas? Just Jonas? That works.
Or,
she hesitated,
something else, if you don't mind.
Jonas felt his heart catch. What else? Ruth looked at her brother. Some silent communication passed between them. Then she looked back at Jonas.
Pa.
Her voice was barely a whisper.
Can I call you Pa?
The word hit Jonas like a thunderbolt. He thought of Clara, of her small hand in his, of the way she used to say that same word in that same soft voice. His eyes burned, his throat closed up. Hal spoke quickly. She doesn't have to. We understand if it's too much. After your daughter and everything. We just thought... Yes. Jonas's voice was rough as gravel. What? Yes. He pulled Ruth closer. You can call me Pa, both of you, if you want. Ruth's face transformed. The sadness didn't disappear, but something brighter bloomed alongside it.
Pa.
She said it again, testing the word.
Pa.
Hal's eyes were wet. He tried to hide it by looking out the window, but Jonas saw. Come here, boy. Hal hesitated. Then he moved closer. Jonas grabbed his hand. I'm not trying to replace your father. I could never do that. He was a good man, and he loved you.
I know.
But I can love you too. Both of you. That's not a betrayal of him. That's just... making room. Hal's face crumpled. For the first time since Jonas had met him, the boy cried. Really cried. Great heaving sobs that shook his whole body. Ruth climbed off the bed and wrapped her arms around her brother.
It's okay, Hal,
she whispered.
It's okay now.
Jonas watched them hold each other. These two broken children who had found him broken too. Maybe that's how it worked. Maybe broken pieces fit together in ways whole ones couldn't. Doc Patterson appeared in the doorway. He took one look at the scene and started to back away. I'll come back later.
No,
Jonas wiped his eyes.
Come in.
What is it? The doctor's expression was troubled. Someone's here to see you. I told him you weren't ready for visitors, but he insisted. Who? Before Patterson could answer, a man pushed past him into the room. Young, maybe 25, wearing a suit that didn't belong in a town like Copper Springs. Mr. McAllister? The man's voice was clipped, official. That's me. I'm Benjamin Wright, attorney representing the estate of Thomas Wheeler. Jonas felt the children tense beside him. What do you want? Wright pulled a folded document from his coat. Mr. Wheeler had no surviving family. When he died, his property was stolen by Silas Crenshaw through forged documents. Now that Crenshaw has been apprehended and the fraud exposed, Mr. Wheeler's will has been located.
His will?
Yes. Wright unfolded the document. Mr. Wheeler left instructions that in the event of his death, his entire estate should go to anyone who brought his killer to justice. The room went silent.
I don't understand, Jonas said slowly.
Wright allowed himself a small smile. Mr. McAllister, thanks to the evidence provided by these children and your own actions in protecting them, Silas Crenshaw will face trial for Thomas Wheeler's murder. That means the Wheeler estate, including 6,000 acres of prime Texas land and a house worth considerable sum, now belongs to the Dawson children. Hal's jaw dropped. That can't be right. I assure you it is. Wright handed the document to Jonas. The children are now the legal owners of the largest ranch in 3 counties. Ruth tugged on Jonas's sleeve.
Pa? What does that mean?
Jonas stared at the paper in his hands. The words blurred together.
It means you're not orphans anymore, sweetheart.
His voice was thick with emotion. It means you have a home.
But,
Hal shook his head.
We don't know anything about running a ranch.
You'll learn. Wright tucked his hands behind his back. And I'm told you have someone willing to help you. He looked pointedly at Jonas. The will also includes a provision for a guardian, someone to manage the property until the children come of age. Wright's smile widened. I believe you've already volunteered for that position, Mr. McAllister. Jonas looked at Hal, at Ruth, at the impossible twist of fate that had brought them all together. Yeah, he pulled them both close. I reckon I have. Wright nodded crisply. Then I'll have the paperwork drawn up. We'll need signatures, of course, and there's a mountain of legal matters to sort through. But the essential point is this. He paused for emphasis. The children are safe. The property is theirs, and Silas Crenshaw will spend the rest of his life in prison. He tipped his hat and walked out. The silence that followed was enormous. Then Ruth laughed. It was a small sound at first, surprised, like she didn't quite remember how laughter worked. But it grew. It filled the room. It broke through 6 years of Jonas's grief like sunlight through storm clouds. Hal started laughing too, then crying, then both at once. Jonas held them and let the tears come. They had lost so much, all 3 of them. Parents, children, homes, hope. But somehow, through fire and blood and impossible odds, they had found each other. And that was enough. That was everything. Doc Patterson poked his head back in. Everything all right in here? Jonas looked up at him through tears. Yeah, Doc. He managed a smile. Everything's all right. Patterson nodded, satisfied. Good. Now get some rest, all of you. You've got a lot of healing to do. He closed the door. Ruth yawned and curled up against Jonas's side. Within moments, she was asleep. Hal sat on the edge of the bed, his eyes distant. Do you think my pa knew? He asked quietly. When he hid those papers? Do you think he knew what would happen? Jonas thought about Thomas Dawson, a blacksmith like himself, a man who loved his family, a man who did what was right, even when it cost him everything. I think he hoped, Jonas said finally. And sometimes hope is all we've got. Hal nodded slowly.
I'm going to make him proud. The boy's voice was fierce. I'm going to learn everything about that ranch. I'm going to run it right. I'm going to be the man he wanted me to be. You already are, son. Jonas squeezed his shoulder. You already are. Hal smiled. A real smile. The first one Jonas had seen since the night they met. Pa? The word still felt new, strange, wonderful. Yeah? I'm glad we found you.
Jonas looked at the boy, at the girl sleeping against his side, at the impossible family they had become. Me too, son. Me too. 3 weeks later, Jonas stood in front of the Wheeler Ranch for the first time. His shoulder still ached when he moved too fast. Doc Patterson had warned him about that, said it might ache for the rest of his life. A reminder, the doctor called it, of what he'd survived. Jonas didn't need reminders. He had 2 of them standing right beside him. It's big. Hal's voice was hushed. Bigger than I expected. Ruth squeezed Jonas's hand. Is this really ours? It's really yours. Jonas looked down at her. Every acre, every building, every fence post. Ours. Ruth repeated the word like she was tasting it. I never had anything that was ours before. You do now, sweetheart. Abigail's wagon pulled up behind them. She climbed down with her usual energy, hands on her hips. Well, don't just stand there gawking. You've got work to do. She marched past them toward the main house. Place has been empty for 10 years. Gonna need a lot of cleaning before it's livable. Jonas followed her, the children close behind. His boots echoed on the wooden porch. The door creaked when he pushed it open. Dust. Cobwebs. Furniture covered in white sheets like ghosts. But underneath all that, bones. Good bones. Solid construction. A home waiting to be woken up. Kitchen's through there, Abigail pointed. Bedroom's upstairs. Jonas, you'll want to check the barn first. Make sure the structure's sound. I'll do that. I'll help. Hal stepped forward. Pa taught me about building. I know what to look for. Jonas put his hand on the boy's shoulder. Then let's go look, together. They left Ruth with Abigail and walked out to the barn. The summer heat hit Jonas like a wall, but he barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere. You all right? Hal asked. Just thinking. About what? Jonas stopped walking. He looked at the barn ahead of them, at the house behind them, at the endless acres stretching out in every direction. About how different everything is, he said finally. A month ago I was alone, living in a 2-room house with nothing but ghosts for company. Now I've got a ranch, 2 kids, a future. Hal was quiet for a moment. Is that bad? No, Jonas turned to face him. It's terrifying and wonderful, both at the same time. I feel that way too. Hal's voice dropped. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I forget where I am. I think I'm back home. I think Mom is going to call me for breakfast. Then I remember. Jonas's heart clenched. That's going to happen for a while. Maybe a long while. Does it ever stop? I don't know. Jonas thought about Margaret, about Clara, about the way their faces still appeared in his dreams. But it changes. The pain doesn't go away, but it makes room for other things. Like what? Like this. Jonas gestured at the land around them. Like building something new. Like watching you and Ruth grow up. Like being part of something bigger than yourself. Hal considered this. Pa used to say that grief was like a river. You couldn't stop it from flowing. You could only learn to swim. Your pa was a wise man. He was. Hal's voice thickened. I miss him every day. I know, son. I know. They stood there for a moment in comfortable silence. Then Hal straightened his shoulders. We should check that barn. Yeah. Jonas started walking again. We should. The barn was in better shape than Jonas expected. Some loose boards, a few holes in the roof. Nothing that couldn't be fixed with time and effort. We could fit 20 horses in here. Hal ran his hand along a support beam. Maybe more. We'll start with 5. Build up from there. You know about horses? I know about a lot of things. Jonas tested the floor with his boot. Blacksmithing, farming, ranching, picked up bits and pieces over the years. Will you teach me? Jonas looked at the boy. 12 years old, but carrying the weight of a grown man. Trying so hard to fill shoes that weren't meant for him yet. I'll teach you everything I know, Jonas said. But how? You don't have to learn it all at once. You've got time. Time, Hal laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. I keep thinking someone's going to take this away, that I'll wake up and it'll all be gone. It's not going anywhere. How do you know? Jonas pulled the deed from his pocket. He'd been carrying it since the attorney gave it to him. Couldn't quite believe it was real. Because I've got this, and because I'll fight anyone who tries to take it from you. He put the paper back. You've already lost too much. I'm not letting you lose anything else. Hal's eyes welled up. He turned away quickly, pretending to examine a stall door. The hinges on this are rusted. His voice was thick. We'll need to replace them. Add it to the list. They finished inspecting the barn and headed back to the house. The sun was starting to drop toward the western hills. Another hot day, fading into evening. Inside, Abigail had worked miracles. The sheets were off the furniture. Windows were open. Ruth was on her hands and knees, scrubbing the floor with more enthusiasm than skill. Look, Pa! She scrambled to her feet when Jonas entered. I cleaned the whole parlor by myself. I can see that. Jonas surveyed her work. Streaky, but earnest. You did good, sweetheart. Abigail said I'm a natural. Abigail's being generous. The older woman appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. But she's got spirit. That counts for something. Ruth beamed. I found something, too. She ran to the fireplace and picked up a small object from the mantel. It was behind the bricks, hidden. She brought it to Jonas. A photograph in a tarnished silver frame. A man and woman standing stiffly for the camera. The man had kind eyes. The woman wore a slight smile. Thomas Wheeler and his wife, Abigail said softly. I remember them. Good people. They deserved better than what Crenshaw did to them. Jonas stared at the photograph. These were the people whose home they now lived in, whose legacy they were inheriting. We should keep this, he said. Somewhere we can see it. So we remember. Remember what? Ruth asked. That this place has history, that people lived here and loved here before us. Jonas set the photograph back on the mantel. We're not just building something new. We're carrying on something old. Ruth nodded solemnly, like she understood. Maybe she did. There's one more thing. Abigail's voice had an odd quality. I wasn't sure if I should mention it, but... What? There's a lawyer in town. Came in on this morning's stage. Says he represents someone who wants to buy the ranch. Jonas went still. Buy it? He's offering a lot of money. More than the place is worth, honestly. Abigail's eyes were watchful. He asked me to pass along the message. Hal stepped forward, his face hard. Who is he? Who's trying to buy our land? He wouldn't say. Just said his client prefers to remain anonymous. Jonas felt the old, familiar tension creeping back into his shoulders. They'd been so close to peace, so close to something like normal. Tell him no. Jonas. Tell him no. His voice was steel. This land belongs to these children. It's not for sale. Not at any price. Abigail studied him for a moment. Then she nodded. I'll tell him. She gathered her things and headed for the door. Before she left, she turned back. Be careful, Jonas. Crenshaw's in prison, but he had friends. Powerful friends. Not everyone's happy about how things turned out. I'll keep that in mind. After she left, the house felt too quiet. Ruth had stopped scrubbing. Hal stood by the window, staring out at the darkening land. "It's not over, is it?" The boy's voice was flat. "There's always going to be someone." "Maybe." Jonas moved to stand beside him. "But we're not alone anymore. We've got people looking out for us. And we've got each other." "Is that enough?" Jonas thought about the question. Really thought about it. "When I was in the war, there was a sergeant in my unit. Tough old man from Tennessee. He used to say that the strongest fortress wasn't the one with the thickest walls. It was the one where every man would die for the man beside him." Hal turned to look at him. "We're not soldiers." "No, we're family, and that's even stronger." Ruth appeared at Jonas's other side. She slipped her hand into his. "I'm not scared." Her voice was small but steady. "Not anymore." "Neither am I." Hal squared his shoulders. "Let them come. We'll be ready." Jonas looked at these two children who had become his own, who had walked through fire and come out the other side, still standing, still fighting. "Yeah." He pulled them both close. "We will." The anonymous buyer didn't give up. Over the next 2 weeks, 3 more lawyers appeared in Copper Springs. Each one brought a larger offer. Each one was turned away. Then the letters started. The first one arrived on a Tuesday morning. No return address, no signature. Just 3 words in blocky handwriting. "Leave or else." Hal found it in the mailbox. He brought it to Jonas without a word. Jonas read it. Read it again. Then he folded it and put it in his pocket. "Ruth see this?" "No, she was in the barn." "Good, let's keep it that way." The second letter came 2 days later. This one was longer. "You don't belong here. The children don't belong here. Take the money and go before someone gets hurt." Jonas burned it in the fireplace. The third letter was different. It arrived at night, tied to a rock that someone threw through the parlor window. Ruth was in the room when it happened. The glass shattered and she screamed. Jonas rushed in to find her on the floor, hands over her head, shaking. The rock had landed 2 feet from where she'd been standing. "Pa!" Her voice was tiny. "Pa, they found us." Jonas scooped her up and held her tight. "Nobody's hurting you. Nobody's hurting any of us." Hal burst in with a rifle that Jonas didn't even know he could shoot. "Who's out there?" "I don't know. Stay inside." Jonas handed Ruth to her brother and grabbed his own weapon. He moved to the broken window and scanned the darkness outside. Nothing. Just empty land and starlight. The coward was already gone. He picked up the rock and untied the letter. This one was shortest of all. Last warning. Jonas crumpled the paper in his fist. "We're going to town tomorrow." His voice was calm, but his eyes were not. "All 3 of us. Together." "What are we going to do?" "We're going to find out who's behind this. And then we're going to end it." The next morning they rode into Copper Springs as a family. Jonas sat tall in the saddle despite his aching shoulder. Hal rode beside him, the rifle visible across his back. Ruth sat in front of Jonas, her small hands gripping the saddle horn. They made quite a picture. The townspeople stopped and stared as they passed. Jonas rode straight to the sheriff's office. He dismounted and helped Ruth down, then turned to Hal. "Stay with your sister. I won't be long." "I want to come with you." "I know, but I need you out here, watching, just in case." Hal's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Jonas pushed through the door of the sheriff's office. A man behind the desk looked up. Gray mustache, weathered face, eyes that had seen too much. "Help you? I'm Jonas McAllister. I've got the Wheeler Ranch now." "I heard." The sheriff leaned back in his chair. "Also heard you've been getting some unwanted attention. That what you call death threats?" "That what they are?" Jonas pulled the crumpled letter from his pocket and slapped it on the desk. "Read for yourself." The sheriff picked it up. His expression didn't change as he read. "This is concerning." "Concerning? Someone threw a rock through my window last night. Came within 2 feet of hitting my daughter." "Your daughter?" "Ruth Dawson. My daughter now." Something shifted in the sheriff's eyes. "The Dawson kids? The ones who took down Silas Crenshaw?" "The same." The sheriff was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window. "You know, Crenshaw had a lot of partners. A lot of people who made money off his schemes." "I figured." "Some of those people aren't happy that he's gone. They lost a lot when he got arrested." "Who are they?" The sheriff turned to face him. "I can't prove anything. Not yet. But there's a man named Vernon Price. Owns a string of banks across 3 counties. He and Crenshaw went way back." "Price. He's behind this?" "Like I said, I can't prove it. But the timing's suspicious. And the lawyers who've been sniffing around your property, they all work for banks. His banks." Jonas felt the pieces clicking into place. "So Price wants the ranch, and he's trying to scare us off." "That'd be my guess. What can you do about it?" The sheriff sighed. "Without evidence, not much. But I can tell you this. Vernon Price is careful. He doesn't get his hands dirty. Everything goes through lawyers and middlemen. If you want to stop him, you'll have to catch him in the act." "How do I do that?" "I don't know, but I'll help if I can." The sheriff extended his hand. "Name's Tom Hollister. I was no friend of Crenshaw's, and I'm no friend of Price's either." Jonas shook his hand. "Appreciate that, Sheriff." "One more thing." Hollister's grip tightened. "Be careful. Price is dangerous. Maybe more dangerous than Crenshaw ever was. Crenshaw was a bully. Price is a snake. You won't see him coming until it's too late." Jonas nodded slowly. "I've dealt with snakes before." He walked out of the sheriff's office to find Hal and Ruth surrounded by a crowd of townspeople. His hand went to his pistol before he realized what was happening. They weren't threatening the children. They were talking to them, smiling, offering food. An old woman pressed a basket of bread into Ruth's arms. A man was showing Hal a new knife. Children hung back, curious and shy. Abigail appeared at Jonas's side. "Word travels fast in a small town." She was smiling. "Everyone knows what those kids did. What you did. They want to help." Jonas watched Ruth laugh at something the old woman said. Watched Hal relax for the first time in weeks. "Price is behind the threats," he said quietly. Abigail's smile faded. "Vernon Price? Are you sure?" "Sure enough. The sheriff thinks so too." "Then you've got a real problem." Abigail's voice dropped. "Price doesn't lose. Ever. He's been building power in this county for 20 years. Quietly. Carefully. Even Crenshaw was afraid of him." "You think I should run?" "I think you should be realistic about what you're facing." Jonas looked at his children, at this community gathering around them like a shield. "Running's not in me, Abby. Not anymore." "Then you'd better have a plan." "I'm working on it." That night, Jonas called a family meeting. They sat around the kitchen table in their new home. Ruth had her drawing supplies spread out in front of her. Hal fiddled with the new knife the townsman had given him. "I need to tell you both something," Jonas said. "And I need you to listen without getting scared." "We know about the letters," Hal said flatly. "We're not stupid." "I know you're not. And we know someone's trying to run us off." Jonas nodded. "There's more. I found out who's behind it. A man named Vernon Price. He wanted Crenshaw's land, and now he wants ours." Ruth stopped drawing. "Is he going to hurt us?" "He's going to try to scare us. That's different." "But what if he does more than scare?" Jonas reached across the table and took her hand. "Then I'll stop him, just like I stopped Crenshaw." "You almost died stopping Crenshaw." "But I didn't. And I won't this time either. Ruth didn't look convinced. Hal wasn't either. Pa, the boy's voice was careful. I've been thinking. About what? About what the sheriff said. About catching Price in the act. You were listening? Through the window. Hal didn't apologize. I think I have an idea. Jonas leaned forward. I'm listening. Price wants the ranch. That's why he's trying to scare us. But what if we made him think he won? What if we pretended to leave? And then? And then we watch. We wait. We catch him when he makes his move. Ruth's eyes widened. Like a trap? Exactly like a trap. Jonas considered it. The plan was risky, dangerous, but it might work. We'd need help, he said slowly. People we can trust to watch the property while we pretend to be gone. Abigail, Hal said immediately. And the sheriff. And those people in town today. They wanted to help. Let them. Jonas looked at his son, this 12-year-old boy who had grown up so fast, who had lost so much and learned so much. When did you get so smart? Hal almost smiled. I had a good teacher. Your pa? Both of them. Jonas felt his throat tighten. All right. He stood up from the table. We'll try it your way. But we do this together. All three of us. No one takes unnecessary risks. Agreed, Hal said. Ruth nodded solemnly. And if things go wrong, if it gets too dangerous, we pull out. No argument, no hesitation. Yes, Pa. Jonas looked at his family. His strange, broken, beautiful family. Then let's catch ourselves a snake. The trap took 3 days to set. They spread the word that they were leaving, told people at the general store, at the post office, made sure it got back to Price's people. Then they loaded a wagon with their belongings and drove toward town. Made a big show of it. Ruth even cried, though Jonas wasn't sure how much was acting. But instead of leaving Copper Springs, they circled around, hid the wagon at Abigail's place, and waited. Sheriff Hollister positioned deputies around the ranch, hidden, watching. On the second night, Price made his move. Jonas was hiding in the barn when he heard the horses. 3 riders coming up the main road, moving slow and quiet. He signaled to Hal, who was in position near the house. The boy signaled back. The riders dismounted in front of the porch. Jonas couldn't see their faces in the darkness, but he could hear their voices. Price said, "Clean it out. Anything valuable." "What about the deed? He wants that most of all." "Probably in the house. Check the safe if there is one." They moved toward the door. Jonas stepped out of the barn. "That's far enough." The men spun around. 2 of them went for their guns. "I wouldn't." Sheriff Hollister emerged from behind the water trough, his weapon drawn. "You're surrounded." Deputies appeared from every direction, 6 of them, all armed. The 3 men looked at each other. Then, slowly, they raised their hands. "Who sent you?" Jonas demanded. One of the men laughed. "You think we're going to tell you?" "I think you're going to prison either way. But if you talk, maybe the judge goes easy." The man's laugh died. He looked at his companions, then back at Jonas. "Vernon Price," he spat the name. "Happy now?" "Will you testify to that? In court?" The man hesitated. Fear crossed his face. "Price will kill us." "Price will be in the cell next to yours." Hollister stepped forward. "We've been building a case against him for months. You're just the final piece." The men exchanged glances again. Then the one who had spoken nodded. "Fine. We'll testify. Just keep us away from him." Hollister signaled his deputies. "Take them in." As the men were led away, Jonas felt a hand slip into his. Ruth had crept out of her hiding spot. Hal was right behind her. "Is it over?" Ruth asked. Jonas looked at the sheriff. Hollister nodded once. Yeah, sweetheart. Jonas pulled her close. It's over. 3 months later, Vernon Price was convicted of conspiracy, fraud, and attempted intimidation. The judge gave him 25 years. Silas Crenshaw's trial followed shortly after. Life in prison, no parole. And on a warm September afternoon, Jonas McAllister stood on the porch of the Wheeler Ranch and watched his children play in the yard. Ruth was chasing butterflies. She laughed as she ran, her hair flying behind her. She talked now, all the time. Sometimes too much, Jonas thought with a smile. Hal was working in the forge Jonas had rebuilt in the barn. The sound of hammer on metal rang across the property. The boy was getting good. Really good. Thomas Dawson would have been proud. Abigail's wagon appeared on the road. She pulled up to the house and climbed down, a basket on her arm. "Brought you some things?" She set the basket on the porch. "And some news." "Good or bad?" "Good. The county officially recognized your guardianship of the children. It's final. They're legally yours." Jonas felt something loosen in his chest that he hadn't known was tight. "Legally mine." "That's what I said." Abigail smiled. "Congratulations, Papa." Ruth came running over, breathless and flushed. "What is it? What's happening?" "Nothing, sweetheart." Jonas scooped her up. "Just some good news." "What good news?" "You're stuck with me forever now. Officially." Ruth's face split into the biggest smile he'd ever seen. "I already knew that." "Oh, you did?" "I knew it the first night, when you came to find me by the creek." Jonas held her tight. Hal walked over from the forge, wiping his hands on a rag. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect." Jonas set Ruth down and put his arm around his son. "We're a family, official and everything." Hal's eyes glistened, but he didn't cry. He'd cried enough. They all had. "I should get back to work," he said gruffly. "That order's not going to fill itself." 5 more minutes won't hurt." "Pa." 5 minutes, son. Sit with us." Hal hesitated. Then he sat down on the porch steps. Abigail excused herself, claiming she had deliveries to make, but Jonas saw her wipe her eyes as she drove away. The three of them sat together in the September sunshine. Ruth leaned against Jonas's side. Hal sat with his elbows on his knees, looking out at the land that was now theirs. "Pa?" Ruth's voice was sleepy. "Yeah, sweetheart?" "Tell me about Mama and Clara again." Jonas felt the old, familiar ache, but it wasn't sharp anymore, just tender, like a bruise that was finally healing. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. I want to know everything." So Jonas told her about Margaret's laugh, about Clara's first steps, about the life he'd had before and the life he had now. He told her about loss and grief and the way pain could transform into something else if you let it, something that made room for love instead of pushing it away. When he finished, Ruth was asleep against his shoulder. Hal was staring at the horizon, his face thoughtful. "You really loved them?" "I did. I still do." "But you love us too, more than anything." Hal was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I think I understand now." "Understand what?" "What you said before, about hearts making room." The boy turned to look at him. "We didn't replace them, and they didn't make us less. It's just more." "That's right, son. It's just more." Hal nodded slowly. Then he stood and stretched. "I should get back to work." "Hal." "Yeah?" "I'm proud of you. You know that, right?" The boy ducked his head, embarrassed, but Jonas could see the pleased curve of his mouth. "Thanks, Pa." He walked back to the forge. A moment later, the sound of hammer on metal filled the air again. Jonas sat on the porch, with Ruth sleeping in his lap, and watched the sun sink toward the western hills. A month ago, he had been alone, broken, waiting to die without really living. Now he had a home, a family, a future. He thought about the boy who had stumbled onto his porch, bleeding and desperate. The little girl who wouldn't speak. The impossible chain of events that had brought them all together. Some people would call it luck. Others would call it fate. Jonas called it something else. A second chance. Ruth stirred in her sleep. Her small hand curled around his finger.
Pa,
She murmured, without waking.
love you, Pa.
Jonas pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Love you too, sweetheart. Love you too. The sun dipped below the hills and painted the sky in shades of gold and rose. The sound of Hal's hammer rang steady and strong. The land stretched out around them, vast and wild and full of promise. And Jonas McAllister, who had lost everything once, sat on the porch of his new home and watched the darkness come without fear. Because he knew now what he hadn't known before. That family wasn't about blood. It was about choice. About showing up. About standing in the gap when the bullets flew and saying, "This is mine, and I will not let it go." He had made that choice on a hot July evening when a wounded boy collapsed at his feet. And he would make it again every single day for the rest of his life. Because that's what fathers did. That's what love did. It stood and it fought, and it never, ever gave up. The stars came out one by one above the Texas plains. Ruth slept on. Hal kept working, and Jonas kept watch over them both, exactly where he belonged, exactly where he was always meant to be. Home.